Hi, my name is Jessica Chu. I've been undertaking my research project in a mixed ability Year 3 class in a co-educational Catholic primary school located in southern Sydney. The research question I am focusing on is, does the use of a no hands up questioning technique facilitate active participation and develop student comprehension? I chose this topic because during my professional experience there, I found that it was always the same students raising their hands, while others would just switch off and exhibit off-task behaviour. Just to give you a bit of context, the study focuses on 12 of the 31 students in my class. These 12 students include 4 non-participators, 4 passive participators, and 4 active participators. These students were chosen based on the baseline data collected in the first 2 weeks. There is regular attendance of all students in the class. To give you a bit more information about the school context of the students in my class, there is an XER value of 1085, which is above the average XER value. It is a modest socio-economic area with 413 students at the school. This study aims to determine whether using a no hands-up questioning technique through the use of paddle pop sticks and a random name generator in the interactive whiteboard can assist in facilitating student participation and develop student understanding. The intervention aims to motivate all students to verbally participate, as this will provide an opportunity for students to both learn content and develop their communication skills. The purpose is to build student confidence and motivate students to learn content. It built on Dylan Williams' 2012 The Classroom Experiment and was explored further through the use of variations such as the interactive whiteboard, random name generator, and drawing multiple names at the same time. The most common form of active individual classroom participatory behaviour is student hand raising. However, Dylan William believes that hands up is one of the most damaging things in a classroom because only a quarter of students consistently put their hands up. The more confident students who sit at the front put their hands up, but the less confident ones who sit at the back switch off. It is hoped that the intervention will develop a classroom culture where students feel comfortable about being wrong. Research has also suggested that cold calling students can increase the number of students engaged in classroom discussion. However, it can make students feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. This intervention gives all students an equal chance of being called without feeling like they were chosen purposely. The frequency of a student's participation is positively associated with learning, and if students do not participate, they may not learn as much. Furthermore, there is a growing body of literature showing how few students participate in class, and yet how beneficial active participation can be for learning and critical thinking skills. Research articulates that interactive whiteboards can lead to greater participation. Students who are normally bored in a typical classroom are more inclined to pay attention because they want to use the interactive whiteboard. Student reflections revealed that most students preferred using the interactive whiteboard random name generator than the paddle pop sticks method. This study takes an action research-based approach. I identified an issue, I implemented interventions, collected data, made changes, and analysed the results. A number of questions emerged as a result of the research proposal. If students become active participators, will their understanding of the implemented curriculum improve? If students are actively participating, will this increase their self-confidence? Will the removal of the intervention subsequently lead all students to become confident, active participators? I collected quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative data were the reflections which students completed at the end of the interventions. They were recorded using Likert scales and written responses. I also collected qualitative data through work samples and observation notes. This is then analysed to determine the quality of student work, and it is assessed against an explicit quality criteria. I plan to be quite consistent in collecting data. However, the actuality of my methodology turned out to be quite different, as you can see in the blue. There were various disruptions and time constraints, which shifted the implementation of interventions A and B, and in the end I did not have enough time to collect data during Phase 4. The first phase involved gathering baseline qualitative data through teacher observation notes of students' participation level. During the second phase, the paddle pop sticks method was introduced to science, HSIE, and religion. At the end of the phase, students completed a reflection to provide feedback. During the third phase, students' names were selected using the interactive whiteboard random name generator. At the end of this phase, students also completed a reflection to provide feedback. I did not have time to begin Phase 4, which was the removal of interventions. It was hoped that following Phase 2 and 3, students would become more confident in answering questions and participating in class. To begin with, I collected baseline data over 6 days and made observation notes based on the participation level criteria I created. I categorized participation based on 3 levels: active, passive, and non-participation. Based on Honey and Mumford's learning styles, the passive participants display a reflective learning style. They quietly think about their personal view, take in and absorb all the information. The active participants display an activist learning style. They like to be involved and are the first to speak. After 6 days of data collection, I calculated the total times each student participated actively and passively and the total times they did not participate. I narrowed it down to 4 students, with the most A's highlighted in yellow, most P's highlighted in blue, and most N's highlighted in green. I renumbered these students A1, A2, A3, A4, P1, P2, and so forth. Then I began implementation of Intervention A. Student work samples were obtained and analysed for the lessons where research data was collected. The work samples were then categorised based on the success criteria. The quality of understanding is compared against the level of participation for individual students. Researcher observation notes were recorded and categorised based on actively engaged, called out, required question repeated, and off task. Student reflections were recorded on Likert scales of 1 to 5, supplemented with written responses. Their responses on Likert scales were put into graphs to display their attitudes. The written responses were also analysed and compared to any trends in their participation level and work samples to identify any correlations and conflicting results. This section presents the results of the study after detailed analysis of the quantitative and qualitative data to explore trends, similarities, conflicts, and findings. There will be a detailed analysis of the observation notes, student reflections and work samples, and a discussion of the key findings. The gaps in the graphs represent student absenteeism. Active participators were actively engaged most of the time, but a few resorted to calling out on some occasions as they were not selected. Passive participators were mostly engaged throughout the lesson and did not require the question repeated as many times as non-participators. Non-participators continued to exhibit some off-task behaviour, but not as often as before interventions were implemented. They were actively engaged at times and occasionally required the question repeated. Students were more engaged with Intervention B. This aligns with literature which says that using the interactive whiteboard leads to greater student engagement. As you can see from the graphs, most students displayed a positive attitude towards the No Hands Up policy. Few students felt a strong dislike towards it. In question 1, most responses were strongly like in relation to the No Hands Up policy. In question 2, many students did not know how they felt about it, but more students liked it than those who disliked it. Looking at question 4, most students did find it very useful and wanted to continue using the interventions in class. 33% of students preferred Intervention A, while 67% of students preferred Intervention B. Some of the written responses for question 3 and 4 can be seen here. Active participators felt that both interventions A and B were fun. One passive participator who initially feared getting the answer wrong felt more encouraged to participate with Intervention B. The most significant change were the attitudes of non-participators. One student thought Intervention A was weird but felt better with Intervention B. Similarly, another student felt that Intervention A was not at all useful but liked Intervention B, saying it was useful because people don't scream. Student work samples were analysed for each lesson, where research data was collected. The work samples were then categorised based on the quality criteria of understanding. A quality of understanding index was calculated by assigning a score to each level of understanding. 1 for low, 2 for medium, 3 for high. This was divided by the total number of participants in the lesson that day. So if all students displayed a high level of understanding, the index score would be 3. This is an example of a high understanding response and hence a mark of 3. This is a work sample from student A1. This is a work sample from student P2 and a mark of 2. Below is an example of a work sample from student N4, and it is a low understanding response with a mark of 1. This student displayed little or no understanding of the task and used little or no relevant vocabulary from the lesson. As you can see, there is slight improvement in student understanding based on the quality of understanding index. The black line is the trend line which shows the quality of understanding increase over time. Slight improvements could possibly be due to increased participation, as there is a positive relationship in the data. However, there could also be other factors contributing to this improvement. Based on the results, there were slight improvements in quality of work, but as a short-term project, it's hard to see whether there is a causal relation between participation and increased student comprehension. Passive participators appear to benefit most from the project as they were given an opportunity to share their knowledge, which they most likely wouldn't have shared voluntarily without the No Hands Up policy. They produced medium to high quality work. Intervention B appeared to be more useful for facilitating the active participation of non-participators who engaged with the interactivity of using the interactive whiteboard to generate names. They did take more time to get used to the No Hands Up policy as they were not used to participating during lessons. They became more attentive and appeared to become more confident. Their work quality varied from low to medium with no significant improvements. Overall, there was more active engagement of students with the interventions than no intervention at all. The intervention did slow down lessons because of the time taken to manage students who called out and required questions repeated. Also, there were times when the students who were selected did not know the answer, and it would take a while before a student who knew the answer was selected. Observation notes demonstrated that most students were actively engaged. Even during times they were off task, all students appeared to enjoy being selected. However, some student reflections contradict this observation and they expressed dislike for the No Hands Up policy. There were many limitations when conducting this research project. There were many times when my lessons would be shortened due to disruptions. When my lessons were shortened, I did not use the No Hands Up questioning technique because it took more time. For example, sometimes none of the students who were selected to answer a question knew the answer, and a few minutes would pass before the selected student could give an answer. Also, time was wasted trying to manage behavior when students start calling out due to not being chosen. Almost every lesson I had to repeat questions. So using the Puddle Pop Sticks and interactive whiteboard random name generator was only possible when I had full 40-minute teaching blocks. The interventions were also implemented in a very disjointed way. On Mondays and Fridays, I did not teach much because of the time spent doing spelling pre-test, post-test, homework corrections, as well as library, gymnastics, sport, music, and other lessons that took place on these days. I wanted to collect data for at least 8 consecutive lessons in 2 weeks, but this took around 3 weeks in disjointed intervals. Also, 2 of the students in my study called out on several occasions when their names were not picked. Other students in the class also exhibited disruptive behavior when their names were not picked, and this resulted in various behavior issues. Although there wasn't a high level of absenteeism, a few absentees skewed results. There was also difficulty in collecting valid data due to the time lapsed between observing students and taking down observation notes. It was extremely difficult to take notes whilst teaching a lesson, and the notes taken directly after a lesson loses its validity and reliability. Implications and future practice. In the future, I need to be more consistent, and implementing these interventions need to be spread over a longer period of time. I also want to make sure I have time to remove the intervention to see if students have built confidence in participating without using these techniques. I would use the random name generator on the interactive whiteboards for some lessons so that all students get a chance to participate. I would also use a mixed approach. For example, if after 3 students are selected and none know the answer, I would just choose a student rather than continue to randomly select another student. I found that the study was beneficial for some students. There were minimal improvements in facilitating active participation and possible correlations between level of participation and quality of work. However, there are inconclusive results due to the inconsistency and difficulty in collecting valid data. Thank you very much for watching.